Hi, I'm Connie Jacob, your host of the Bravely Connected podcast, where we find our inner brave to connect with ourselves, others, and what we dream of for our lives. Get comfy because we're about to dive in to finding our brave connection. Welcome to the Bravely Connected podcast. I'm your host, Connie Jacob. Every week I show up on here to help you be bravely connected, not only to yourself, but to others around you. I have a bit of an embarrassing story for you this week. But before I get into my embarrassing story, make sure you hit that subscribe button because every week I come on here to give you so much value, give you everything that I have inside of me so that you and the people around you can feel bravely connected and not isolated, make people feel like they belong and that they matter, and to remember that you matter too. I've shared this story in numerous school assemblies all across my nation for anti-bullying campaigns that talk about how I was called Connie Chunk in school. I was the big girl and I was bullied, and I share the story of that with students everywhere. Well, this one dance class, in walks one of the people who used to bully me. Can I just say, when they walked in, and I noticed who they were, I instantly felt like I was back in grade 8. And all of a sudden, everything in me felt frozen. My mind froze, my body froze. I instantly felt like this cold sweat come over me. I could not even function in my mind. I don't even know how I got through that class because I instantly went back to that grade 8 girl that was the big girl being bullied by these boys. Now, what's interesting is that in this moment, all I could see in this person was you were the bully. I had a hard time seeing past that. And what was so interesting is that throughout the class, you know that I teach how attunement rewires the brain. And so me being heavily attuned to people when I'm teaching them, looking at them, looking past the outer exterior and seeing who is this person in front of me. I had to get over my fight or flight to be able to truly see this person again and to give them a chance to have grown up. I mean, seriously, we were in grade 8 in 1988. So I remember looking over, and he had this beautiful wife and this beautiful little girl. And I had a moment where I had a choice. I could either allow my past experience to continue to allow me to believe a narrative about him that was based on truth from way back, or I could see him for who he is now. I can't say I did that the first class. I was really just getting over myself. And I think that that's important for us to realize that when we've been hurt by people, we adopt a perception of people. The good thing about that is that we start to learn who to watch out for, who to trust, and who not to. It gives us a good sense of spidey senses. We don't want to get into damaging relationships over and over again, right? But the problem with it is it doesn't allow people to grow and change. It doesn't allow us to see people for who they are in this moment. This time, because I had processed through some of my fight or flight and some of the narratives, this time I was able to truly see who he was. And what was interesting is that instead of seeing a bully, I saw a beautiful husband and a wonderful dad. I saw someone who was warm and friendly and welcoming to everyone around him. And all of a sudden, I actually started to see the boy that I probably would have had a heart for had I been the adult in the room. That is the kid in the corner. That's the kid that I would want to advocate for. That's the one that I am starting my foundation for. That's the one that I've always had a heart for, is the bully, the marginalized, the ostracized, the misjudged. And it gave me this heart of compassion instead of guardedness. And it's interesting. I was meeting with a principal the other week, and we were chatting about how a lot of times, what she's noticed in her career is that we judge kids. We're like, oh, I know what an ADHD kid is like, or I've had a kid like this before. I've met this kid in a different lifetime in teaching. And we now project our perception of this new kid based on our past experiences. And this is where it gets dangerous. This is where we need a heart of compassion. We need to be able to truly see people for who they really are, even if they've done us wrong in the past. I think that's probably one of the hardest things. Something that I was just thinking of on a walk the other day was hurt people, but hurt people need to be brought closer to not be hurt people anymore. I know that was a bit of a tongue twister. Let me repeat that. When someone is hurt, they will hurt someone else. The problem is that we send those people away, but what they actually need is they need to be brought close so that healing comes to their hearts. The problem is that you don't want to be ending up into another toxic relationship. You don't want to let down some proper boundaries in order for someone to get the healing that they need. And so what we need in this world is we need, number one, if you are a person who is experiencing a toxic relationship where you are being misused and abused, you do need a boundary and you do need to walk away. You do not need to bring that person closer. You need to get out of there. Now, if that person is your child, then you need to get the help that you need in order to have the boundaries, but in order to be able to bring that child closer. And if you want more information on how to do that, you need to read my book, Bring Them Closer, because that is my exact experience. But for now, for those of us who are teachers, leaders, parents, how do we bring these hurting people closer? Well, number one, to be bravely connected again means we need to lay down our perceptions of people and see them for who they really are. We need to see the diamond in the rough. We need to see the strength and the gold in the bully. We need to look underneath behavior and get to the thought processes and the emotions that are leading them to those places. I've probably shared this story on a past podcast. This is a story that has stuck with me for many years. In schools, I will sometimes do an exercise called I See You, where we put the students in a circle and one person goes in the middle. And what we do on the outside of the circle is call forth the strengths that we see in the person in the middle. It's usually an incredibly empowering experience for both the person in the middle, because they're finding out what their strengths are and how people see them. But it's also empowering for the people on the outside, having to truly practice those attuning skills to look at somebody and not see a deficit, but to see strength. It's beautiful. But this one time it went horribly wrong. A grade 5 boy put up his hand, so he volunteered to go in the middle of the circle. And all of a sudden, all the kids started saying, he's the bully. He's the bully. He's the bully. I look over at the teacher. I'm like, help me out here. She's like, oh no, he's the bully. And I saw this poor boy go from excited to be in the middle of the circle to shrugging his shoulders and sinking down into himself. And I thought to myself, we have got to do something right now for this poor kid. And what I did was in that moment, it became a teachable moment for this class to say, if this is the bar that you have set for him, then that is all he will ever be. He will be a bully because you've named him that. Now, does someone have agency over their own self? Absolutely. But the problem is that if you call someone a bully long enough, that's who they'll be, because you have basically told them, this is all we see in you. But if you see something past the bully, if you see some kind of strength, strength begets strength. I will always tell teachers, parents, youth workers, youth at risk, they just need a win. They just need something, one tiny little win. And for an adult to notice it, to go, oh, that was so good, because then they might do that again. And then they might do that again. The problem is if we only see anxiety and we only see depression and we only see opposition and we only see the bully, we only see what rubs us the wrong way, and we keep calling that out, well, then that gets repeated. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You see, you and I have the power in our tongues to build up or tear down. Now, I'm not saying that if we call out the strengths of someone that they're going to rise to the occasion, but at least then they have a choice. And it starts with my perception. It starts with me changing my perception of someone in my heart first. You want to change the world? Change your heart first. You want to see an impact in your home? Change your heart first. You want to see an impact in your workplace or in your classroom? Change your heart first. Start to notice the way you look at people and evaluate it, and don't judge it. Don't be like, wow, how could I be so awful? No, no, no. Just realize it's a human experience to judge. I think that we need to confront judgment with a little bit more realism to realize it is a natural human state to be, first of all, judgmental, because our brains go to the deficit. Our brains are wired towards the negative than to look for positive. So what we need to do is we just need to make a little shift and notice when we're judging. Notice when we have a wall up. Notice when I have not giving that person the benefit of the doubt. I am expecting the worst out of them. And maybe if I start looking for what's good and calling it out, maybe something could change. Now, maybe not, especially sometimes in workplaces, that becomes a little more complicated, but we can't go wrong with allowing the perceptions of our hearts to be shifted, to really see someone instead of seeing the school gossip. You walk into the staff room and there's that teacher always gossiping about everybody. And instead of having that judgment in my heart, looking for, okay, there's the behavior that I'm noticing. I'm noticing the gossip. What could they possibly be thinking? Do people really wake up in the morning wanting to make others look bad with their tongues? Do they really want to gossip? I mean, most people, no, they don't. They didn't think about waking up being a jerk. So there was a thought process that got them there. What could they possibly be thinking? Now, we'll never know what they're thinking, but we could guess. Maybe they don't feel they're enough and they need to put other people down in order to make themselves look better. And what emotion is underneath that? Well, feeling left out, not feeling like they don't belong themselves. And what's underneath that? You keep thinking, what's underneath that? Keep asking yourself, what's underneath that? What's underneath that? Well, shame. Shame is underneath that. And when we can start to see someone a little bit differently, we can begin to make changes in ourselves that can relate to them on a different level. Now, this does not mean I don't have boundaries. I'm still not going to go sit with that person in the staff room. That's my boundary. I'm going to stay away from them physically. I'm not going to enter into those conversations, but I'm not going to judge them in my heart. That's the shift. That's the difference. When I see them doing something good, I'm not going to think, oh, you're doing something good right now, but I heard you like 2 hours ago. I'm going to call it out. I'm going to be like, wow, Susan, way to go. But the perception that creates judgment in my heart will not allow me to encourage people when they are doing a good job. I'm going to think they could never do good. And this separates us. This doesn't just separate us in classrooms. This separates us in homes. This separates us in our communities. Now people become the other. Sometimes I like to describe it in a funny way. I don't know if you've ever been driving and there's a car and it cuts you off. I mean, I am furious. I am saying words that are not great at this car, at the red car. The red car is an absolute, right? But as soon as they get out of their car and I get out of my car and I meet them, now all of a sudden they're not they're a person. But we have turned people into red cars. We have turned people into objects. We have dehumanized people with our judgments. And the first place to change is inside of me, to be able to see people not as the red car, but as a person that has thoughts and emotions instead of just behaviors. And now I've got empathy. Now I've got compassion. but I can still respond with boundaries. So I'm going to come back to that question that I asked about hurt people, but those hurt people that are hurting others, they need to be brought closer. How do I do that? Well, the first step is to change my perception of them, to dig underneath what's underneath the behavior. What are those thoughts? What are those emotions? What boundaries do I need so that I'm not sucked into the toxicity? What does bringing the hurting closer really look like? What does it look like? And I'm going to say every situation is different. Every situation is different. Sometimes when you're leaving a toxic relationship, an abusive relationship, the way you bring a hurting person closer is you get yourself out of there. That's how you do that, because they're not going to learn how to treat people better if you keep allowing them to treat you the way they are. You're actually causing the problem. Instead, allowing them to realize, hey, this is not okay. The reason why people mistreat people is because people allow them to. They don't learn. Separation actually will allow them to learn not to do this. Now, you don't do this with children, but you do this with adults. If you're a teacher, the way you bring that hurting student closer, the number one way is you change your perception about them and you start to look for their strength. If you are in an office or a workplace, the way you bring the hurting closer is you decide what you're going to tolerate and what you're not, and you put a boundary up, but it's a boundary now and it's not a wall. And you choose to see the value in that person and you look for the times that they're showing that value so you can encourage them. And if that's hard for you, all it is doing is revealing in your heart, oh, I might have a perception there that's not so great. And that's what you can control. You can control your perception of people. You can't control people, but you can control your perception of them. But I love Brene Brown when she says, people are hard to hate close up. So lean in. Can't lean in without changing our perception. I can't lean in without changing the way I see someone. What people need to know is, do you see me? Do I matter? And sometimes when people feel seen and like they matter and they're valuable and they have strength, they start to show you more of that. Now, it's not a new kid by Friday. It's not a new student by Friday. It's not a new person by Friday. But encouragement goes a long way. Encouragement creates courage in people. The word courage is literally in the word encouragement. But I can't encourage until my perception has changed. And so perception shifting and boundaries go together in how to bring the hurting closer, how to create a bravely connected room. How do we believe the best about one another? It takes it to a whole other level when you start to implement what you've learned for yourself. You start to teach that to your students. You start to model that to your kids. You start to see it in action in your workplace. But it does not start with a workshop. It starts with you facing yourself. In the Bravely Connected method that I've created, it's all about starting with ourselves, a tuning in first and then a tuning out. Because to be bravely connected means I walk this first. I will go first. As the adult in the room, I will go first. I'm so excited. For my 50th birthday, I am gifting myself the gift of my very own foundation that will bring this Bravely Connected method to schools without any kind of financial barrier. When you think about it, every single person that you see today has been impacted by education. And when you think about what they really remember about school, it's not usually going to be what they learned. It's how school made them feel. Did they feel they belonged? Who were they? Were they the bad kid? Were they the good kid? Were they the smart kid? Did they feel like school was a good experience? And the way people feel about school is the way they interact in society. And so this is why I've started this. And so I am really excited to be able to launch this with a GoFundMe. If you're somebody who believes in what I'm doing, I would love to invite you to join hands with me to create the difference that we can create together to create bravely connected schools, to have that kind of ripple effect on society. In the meantime, please keep being brave to look at yourself, to be the change that you want to see in the world first here, so that our spaces can be bravely connected again.